everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Advanced Pretend. This is Matt coming to you live from my studio. I unfortunately was not able to be on this podcast recording due to some technical difficulties, but that is what happens when you are making podcasts from different parts of the world. And it's a bummer because this episode is fantastic. This week, Jenn sits down with artist Borbay, an amazing visual artist, best known for his neon-esque paintings, his reimagining of the Guggenheim Museum, and his, dare I say, Van Gogh-esque representations of different parts of Augusta where the Masters golf tournament is played. This is a fun conversation, tons of just sort of like inside chat about process and their loves for different artists. I think you are going to really enjoy it. And when the episode is over or before, if you want to get a little acquainted with him, please go to Borbay.com. It's Borbay.com or at Borbay on Instagram to check out his amazing, fantastic art. And I really hope that you enjoy this episode of Advanced Pretend.
I'm sitting here with artist Borbay, and I'm going to start calling him Jason in a second because that's his given name.
It's true.
So Jason Borbet, welcome to Advanced Pretend.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for agreeing to be with me here. And in fact, Jason and I do know one another. This isn't one of those one-offs where I ask people and then they're sorry they said yes because they didn't know me. We met in probably spring of 2021. Wait.
I'd say that's about right.
Something like that. And I had come back to Teton Valley to interview Jason. And Jason had, in fact, moved to Teton Valley as I left Teton Valley.
Yes, 2016.
And I left in 2015, so that makes sense. We were ships in the night.
Yes.
And then I came back here and we did a magazine interview for Artist Magazine. And
fabulous piece of writing.
Oh, thanks, man. I like that because it's actually coming from another writer.
True.
Jason,
I dabble.
Yeah, he's not just an artist. He's an artist on many levels because, we don't want to call writing not art, but
writing is art.
Thank you. And my pleasure to have interviewed you. And now I came back here. So we live in the same neighborhood and you're all over the neighborhood. I think one of the reasons why I was so interested in Jason was because of how much he had integrated himself into the community when he first landed here with his family, a family of 5.
Yes.
3 kids. Good on you.
Yes.
You're a hero.
Good on my way.
Right. Aaron Borbet, acupuncturist, stellar human. Just
also District 1 fire commissioner.
What? See?
You just never know.
And then Jason has kind of put himself in the community too as a performer. Having interviewed him, I promise I'll get through this, Jason. He has a checkered past, if you will, in employment, very similar to mine, a little bit more entertaining than mine. But I started counting how many jobs I've had since I was 13 the other day, and I
lost count at 50.
Something. But he does have a background as a failed stand-up comedian. Not failed. Tried is not failing.
I had an E for effort.
Yes.
But I did perform with some rather excellent comedians.
Right.
I got to do a couple shows with Jim Gaffigan, which was pretty awesome.
Fun. I love that guy.
Yeah, Jim's awesome. And we had 3 home births, Aaron and I. And he had like 6 home births. And I felt like every time I saw him in the green room, he had a new baby with him. And it was just kind of like an ongoing thing. I'm like, Jim, which kid is this?
Right. Still a Catholic?
Yes. But being a failed stand-up comic is it's a great thing to fail at.
Yes.
Because
Agreed.
Public speaking is a lot of people have the fear, justifiably so. I think it's probably that's why they have stuff like Toastmasters.
Yeah.
Public speaking is people's pretty much number one fear. So just going up there and being in front of hostile audiences in New York, chucking beer bottles at you at 2 a.m. because you're absolutely bombing on stage. Valuable because it's very unlikely that you're going to run into a similarly hostile environment In most public speaking, everyone wants you to do well, so it's no big deal.
Yeah.
But the public speaking I do now is like announcing the 4th of July parade or calling black tie bingo for the seniors west of the
Oh, that's
Tetons.
so fun. What?
Auctioneering the Calcutta at my country club for just degenerate golf gambling.
Don't forget your annual role in the Christmas Carol.
Yes, the Christmas Carol, played Fred, and then also the Nutcracker.
Nutcracker, that's
Yes.
right. With the costuming.
With my daughter Coraline, I
So good.
play Mother Ginger, and this year I added the Mouse King, so I got to stab the Nutcracker in the back, but then Clara kills me with a slipper. So
Nice.
everything equals out in the end.
Right. I mean, what wonderful plot points. let's reflect. And so Jason, in fact, has been creative from a very young age, and I understand your mother was a really emphatic influence on your creativity, but you also give a lot of praise to a very specific teacher. And I would love it if you could talk about her a little bit, what grade you were in, and how she personally affected you as a kid.
Sure, absolutely. Well, it all started with my mom, Kathy. And I think I was 2 years old. And so she loved to paint. And she just let me paint a wooden bunny when I was 2. And it was around Easter. And I was just like, can I paint one? She's like, sure. And I picked up a paintbrush and basically never put it down. And then it was 9th grade. So I went to Smithtown High School. And at the time, we had a 9th grade center, which was a separate building. So we had about 550 people in our class.
Mm-hmm.
Then we had a 10-12 building. So it was like physically separated. So for a divine stroke of luck, somehow the 9th grade art classes were all booked up, and I didn't get in one, which I was like, this aggression will not stand. Right. And so I marched over to the 10-12 building. At the time, I had to be about, 4'9" and about 72 pounds. Mm-hmm. And I just walk into the first art class I see, and I just go and sit down, and everybody stopped. And they were all, sophomores to seniors. So they looked like giants to me. And my teacher, who at the time was Miss Hines and then became Mrs. Livesey when she got married while I was in her class, she said, "Excuse me, what do you think you're doing?" And I said, "Well, the art class is full of 9th grade centers, so I gotta, go to this art class." She's like, "This is advanced placement. That's college level. You are in 9th grade. You cannot take this class." I was like, "Okay." And then I just kept sitting there, and eventually she acquiesced and just, "All right, fine."
Nice.
So I talked my way into advanced placement art when I was in 9th grade, and my teacher was amazing. Ms. Livesey was so passionate about teaching, but not just teaching, providing us a framework and letting us know that not only can you build art into a collegiate career, but into a career itself. So She brought in this the late great Jeff Fisher, who was this hulking man. He was this physical specimen who played basketball, but he was just the most passionate artist. And he would do figure drawing with us every Friday. So we would draw from life, and he would challenge us to do the craziest stuff. Like we would stand up on a desk, get a 6-foot stick that we found outside of the school and put charcoal on it and draw. He made us draw with our toes. So we put charcoal between our toes, and we'd have critiques, and he'd come up to me, and he in front of the whole class, he'd be like, "All right, Jason, yeah, you like this piece?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "You think your mom's going to like it?" I'm like, "Yeah." "You think she's going to put it on the fridge?" I'm like, "Yeah, she might." And then he'd rip it up, and he's like, "It's crap, start over." And so trial by fire. But Mrs. Livesey, she also, she would bring in counselors from different schools. So half of our class got admitted to RISD and Pratt, literally based on our sketchbooks.
Nice.
She brought in people to talk to us about different scholarships you could apply for. So she was just, she was the full package.
Right. She really wanted to set you guys up to succeed.
She set us up to succeed. She challenged us. She never took any guff. And, a guy like me, you could imagine occasionally I would say some off-color remarks, and she would take me in the hallway and she would be like, "Absolutely not." So you learned how to full praise.
That never happens between us.
Yeah. And fortunately, but fortunately, she, we've been in touch. We're Facebook friends.
Good.
I took my wife upstate, and we got to hang out with her and her husband. And so she was just a tremendous influence. And, my dad was a teacher for 37 years. And, I can't stress the importance of that special teacher. Mm-hmm. And for me, it was, getting that special teacher in art, which was incredible. And she was just fantastic. So I owe her a lot, and I don't hesitate to tell her. I tell her all the time.
Right. And isn't that wonderful? Such a great aspect of an instructor to be able to recognize that your perspective will be broadened, not just by her,
Right.
and bringing in someone, I mean, that guy was a basketball player.
Yeah, so
Wait.
Jeff was just this larger than life figure, and I'll never forget this one time he had spent, I don't know, 6 or 8 months on this, lithograph etching, like into limestone. So this, it's immutable once it's in there.
Yeah.
And so he had this guy fighting a minotaur. And it was just beautiful and stunning. But when he printed it, he realized that he had etched the left foot in the wrong direction. So the guy had like 2 right feet. He was not pleased. And, but yeah, he was something else. And then actually when Ms. Livesey, she took a maternity leave. And so my senior year, this gentleman, Dan Weldon, came in and he was our teacher, which was amazing because Dan Weldon is a world famous printmaker.
Nice.
And he has this legendary house in the Hamptons that he built himself. And he's got different tiles that were done by all these people. Like you go in there, there's tiles by, de Kooning, and like it's just crazy. Like just like every artist from that era had spent time doing printmaking with him. He invented the process of solar etching, which is great because it's very clean and very green. And basically what you do is you put like certain, it's like kind of biodegraded chemicals on something you etch and you just expose it to the sun. And it creates a relief in the negative space, and then you can do prints. So that and monotypes. And so it was very cool. So we just,
God, is exposed to so many mediums and methods.
Yeah, it was
at such a young age.
It was a college, it was basically, I was in art college from 9th grade to 12th grade. And so it was very cool. And just to know, and then when I went to college, I wanted to run on a D1 level. So
I was just going to say, you didn't go to college so on any kind of art scholarship. You were an athlete and went to college on scholarship for running.
Yes.
And then matriculated through in graphic design.
Correct.
Okay. So I see like Jason, when I think about his journey in my own perspective, I'm like, this guy has so much going on at such a young age. And you were kind of checking off the boxes of your life and saying, but I'm good at this too. Why couldn't I be an athlete who went to college, to live the dream of running at this level?
Right.
Not really putting your art and taking a back seat because you majored in creativity as being a graphic designer. But to fast forward into Jason's adult life after his many jobs, but has always found a way to feed his own creativity through these positions. And that could have been like a recruiter for a creative agency, which you've done. And but then you had an epiphany, and you just happened to be in the tropics at the time, and you had made a decision
in Maui.
Yes, with your beautiful wife, Erin.
Yes.
And only recently we celebrated our nation's birthday, but Jason does like to talk about his decision to become a full-time artist as his Independence Day.
Yes, July 2nd, 2009 is my Independence Day. So that's put that on the calendar. Have a scotch that day in my honor.
Yeah, let's all celebrate with a bottle rocket just for Jason. But okay, so what's that been like for you? Because you much of your career you dabble in 9 to 5, and deciding to do this as you were doing now successful. What was there any one specific catalyst that fed that decision? Was there a moment, or was it a series of moments?
Well, I would say, like most people in their 20s, I had my life figured out. I was going to be an advertising executive till I was 40, retire a millionaire, and become an artist. But then I met the right person, my wife, Erin, and she encouraged me to leave the traditional working world early because I knew what I wanted to do and I was passionate about creating. So I owe it to finding the right person who was, very supportive, and she's inspired me to live my best life. So I retired at 28 and became a full-time artist. And we were in Maui, and I was painting on Big Beach. There was this kind of water grave, they call it. So I was doing a painting of this water grave, and Erin, my wife, girlfriend at the time, she's out there laying on the beach in this beautiful red bathing suit, and I'm out there drinking some beers and painting and maybe sampling some other things that Maui tends to offer.
That helps.
And I'll tell you, I realized it was misting, and I'm like, the world doesn't need another guy selling ads. I mean, there's plenty of them out there. There's plenty of them better than I am. And so I just decided to take the leap. And then I came back, gave 6 weeks with my boss. And because at the time I was the business director of an ad agency, and we were splitting our time between Tribeca and downtown New York and Stockholm, Sweden. So
Gotcha.
It was a little shocking, I think, for everybody when I gave my notice, but no regrets at all. And so, yeah, July 2nd, 2009.
And I feel like when you talk about having a partner in your life, to kind of help you get to know what you're really meant for, you feel like she just asked you all the right questions?
Well, so I think that the strength of any relationship, whether it's romantic, friendship, family, anything, is communication. And Erin and I, we talk about everything.
Right.
We're each other's consiglieres. We, if there's anything we're thinking of, and I'm like, hey, I was thinking about doing this, we talk it through. And whether that's about, she's an entrepreneur, I'm an entrepreneur, but we share 3 children and our marriage. And, and it's like a lot of people are like, wow, you guys just, get along so great. I'm like, yes, because we put the work in,
Right.
There's, like resentments build and simmer when you don't communicate.
Oh boy.
So we talk about everything and, even this gallery.
Right.
So a year and a half ago, it was New Year's, and she jokingly asked me if I had New Year's resolutions, which I never do because we constantly course correct throughout the year.
Sure.
And she's like, I think it's time for you to get a gallery. And I was like, really? Because I've been working from home for maybe 13 years. And so I made one phone call to Zach Smith, former mayor, and it's like, yeah, space opened up in the Crossroads building. So from that conversation with my wife to the space, I think it was a 2-week span.
Right.
And so, boom, I have my gallery space. Amazing. I love working out of the house. I go home, I'm more present, which is great for the kids and great for my wife and great for myself. So, it's a blessing, and I get a view of the only traffic light in town. So,
and the Big Hole Mountains, which I feel are the most underrated range in our valley.
Yeah, big holes.
Yeah.
If you were looking that way, you'd see them right now.
Yeah, exactly. They're right there. But I love the fact that both of you are entrepreneurs and you're jumping in with both feet together. And always I love the term course correction over the course of a year, because you are managing the lives of 3 other humans.
Correct.
Just happen to be a little bit shorter than you. But that they depend on you at this point. And even today, Jason has 2 of his kids.
And my daughters are hanging out in the other room. They're watching the Minions.
Yeah. And so they're having some fun too. And but yeah, I've noticed that about you too. I think when I first interviewed you, you were working at home and you had 2 of the kids, and Erin was walking out with the other one. And so it's almost like you guys are flame jugglers that doing the routine. We're always tossing back to each other. Absolutely.
And ironically enough, my gallery sits on South Main Street, and my wife's acupuncture practice is on South Main Street. So that means we comprise about 7% of all business downtown Victor. So you are dominating. We're growing a monopoly here. It's you're just seeing the Borbay name popping up everywhere. Oh, different spellings. But.
So I know you for working in acrylic.
Correct.
And behind us, you can see that Jason is just so, I don't know, even audaciously. That's the only word that comes to mind. Recreating Picasso's Guernica, which is special to me. I've actually seen this thing in person. It's incredibly moving. And I'm so proud of Jason for tackling this. This is not a commission. He's doing it because, why? Tell me.
Well, so it did begin with a commission, not this piece, but I have this lovely couple that commissioned me to do American Gothic as a neon, and famous Grant Wood painting. It's the guy holding the pitchfork and the woman with the tight bun. And actually, I think it works out that the woman was Grant Wood's aunt, and the guy with the pitchfork was his dentist. Now, if you look at that painting, the idea of that man being your dentist would be horrifying, because he looks very, very, very dangerous.
I mean, the reason why people mock that thing up to be horrific is because it's like already edging into scary.
Yes.
Just the way he depicted his gauntness.
The severity of his features. So anyway, I did that painting and it sent me off on a whole new tangent. And so the next thing I did was I did a neon version of the Mona Lisa. After American Gothic, I decided to take on the Mona Lisa.
Right.
And so,
which I've seen both of these in person. Which
yes,
I don't know if I saw completed, but for sure, the
very
journey
close.
was beautiful.
So I did the Mona Lisa, which was really, fantastic, and I loved it. And it wasn't a commission, sold right away, which is always very nice. And to some very dear friends. And so then I was thinking, what other paintings have really impacted me? And I too had spent hours in front of the original. And so yes, Guernica, Picasso, which I love on two levels. One, because it's a very challenging, very special, very poignant painting, about the bombing by the fascists of the town and the horrors and the atrocities that happened. But also, Picasso himself spent the last 5 or 6 years of his life recreating all the masterworks in his own visual language. So I think if anyone would appreciate me doing this, it would be Picasso.
Yeah. I mean, he was inspired by so many others and not afraid to admit it, wanting to assign his own voice to those things, which is a mark of a great artist, I think, to embrace the idea of duplicating, but also saying, what am I learning from this?
Yes.
I mean,
it's perpetual education. And, a lot of people, they paint the same style over and over again. And, for myself, I'm always trying to push myself. I do collage paintings. I have a new golf series that I'm working on. I'm doing the remastered neon series. And, the reason that these paintings are so masterful is because they are dynamic. The compositions are extraordinary. The color palettes are extraordinary. When I was breaking down the Mona Lisa, you're looking at it and I'm like, there is not a single piece of this picture plane that isn't activated. Everything is perfectly balanced. The composition is extraordinary.
It's mathematically
it's mathematically perfect.
Right.
And not a surprise, the artist himself was something of a tremendous inventor. Just it was incredible. So
at one point, Leonardo da Vinci used to espouse that learning from books is the only way to go. And then as he got older, he said, wait a second, experience matters.
Yes.
Okay. And I like that about him. And I like that about any artist I talk to, that I gravitate toward, that I want to have a conversation with. They haven't learned it all just by studying. And they have also duplicated others' works and put themselves in a position of always being the student. Right?
Yes. Well, Da Vinci was extraordinary on that level. I mean, he would do exhaustive studies of drawing how water flowed. And he invented the tank, which is unbelievable. Obviously went on to great fame as a Ninja Turtle as well.
He was so diversified in his talent.
Yes, it was remarkable.
Pretty great. All right. Well, I was going to ask you, why are you so attracted to depicting neon? And I don't think that I think your answer is going to be interesting to the audience, but I think that I don't know, it kind of makes the canvas sing in a way, but for you as an artist, why neon? I mean, you could make your colors pop in a different way, but why are you so attracted to that kind of moment in our mid-century history?
Well, on many levels.
Mid-century of the 20th century.
Right. So, neon was the first popular lighting. It was difficult to control because it's gas in a tube, and it's intricate to bend the tubes, and they're fragile and they break easily. But neon was major in establishing cities. And so there's a deep, rich history with the actual tangible neon. For me, I was always into low light and available light photography. So, in college, me and my buddy Blaze would go around, take wacky pictures. Like we found these old men masked in the trash, and we just put them on and went around, took all these crazy photos. So I was very.
And that's when you were still in the dark room.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, and so that was something that we really enjoyed doing, but it was also kind of the marriage of my graphic design background. When I was studying, I studied under a gentleman who worked directly for Paul Rand, and Paul Rand is the grandfather of contemporary branding. He came up with the rebus for IBM, and he came up with the UPS logo. And what was extraordinary about what he did is he would create entire brand books. Do this, don't do this. It was extremely meticulous. No one had ever taken it to that extent. And so, with that in mind, the combination of low and available light photography and graphic design, typography, perfect marriage and neon. And it's just something that I've always found fascinating, endlessly fascinating. Like I see a neon and I could just sit there and stare at it. And, we live in a world of advanced technology and, everything was going to kill painting, photography, computers, AI, all this stuff. But painting is always going to be there. And if you're going to dedicate 1 to 3 months on one single frame in this antiquated language, you better really like the image.
It really is an antiquated language. I love the kind of primal nature of creating, and even cavemen were doing it, before we just found out. We've just found out that it's even older than what we thought.
Right.
And
I know Gardner's Art in the Age is going to need a new first chapter.
No shit, right? I mean, it's amazing what we keep uncovering, and I love that because it means that we don't really know ourselves as well as we think. Like as a human race,
that's a metaphor for everybody individually as well.
Oh my goodness. On a personal level, it can be torture.
Yes.
For myself, for instance, don't really gravitate toward the news because my theory is Nero is still fiddling. Okay. It's just been going on for a really long time. It's just called something else. And what do I want for my own life? Do I want to be toxified by that? Or do I want to say, how can you affect people in a positive way on an individual level, Jenn?
Absolutely.
And I do it through writing, and I support other artists, other writers and artists, and being in conversation with someone like you. It really does feed my creativity on a level that's more than professional. I mean, this podcast is a passion project. And I had a friend recently ask me, don't you ever feel like you should be doing more? Like maybe you should write a book. And no, not now. I worked on pitching this kind of programming for like 18 months, and I finally got connected to Matt Jackson, and together we're doing this, and that's what I'm doing right now. But who knows what is next, right? I mean, I can't plan that necessarily,
right?
But I can keep creating to figure out what it might be, because it's a journey, not a destination, to get totally cliche on you. But it's the truth.
Yeah, I mean, creation is the journey, and you continue to create. And when I went full-time art, I made a commitment to myself that, in the parallels to being a former runner, if you live just for the competition, maybe you compete 8-12 times a year, and then you're training for 12 months.
Right.
If you don't learn to appreciate the everyday nuances of training and building your fitness and sharpening your fitness, you're going to be miserable. So if you live just to post a final painting on Instagram and get likes and try to sell it, it's going to be awful. So, I made a commitment to not only celebrate each step, but to run my art practice like a actual business. And that's generally about 9 to 5. The summers, I take a great deal of time off to play golf every day because I don't ski or snowboard, and I work hard all winter. And we live in a beautiful place. We live at the Bronze Buffalo Ranch, and we're right on the golf course. And I'm deeply in love with golf. And so in the summer, I golf a lot. And, it's all about life balance. I'm never going to retire. I'm also never going to be 42 3/4 to be able to hit the ball 300 yards. So I'm going to enjoy it now while I can.
Go.
Not every drive. Okay. If you played with me, I'm not being hyperbolic here.
You hyperbolic?
Never.
Anyway, let's move into what it has actually compelled me the most about your artistic journey. And it's this decision to paint Frank Lloyd Wright's Guggenheim every year for 20 years. And I believe you're in the 11th year of the project. 12th? No, I never get
15.
Right. Son of a bitch. Every time. Okay, so he's in the 15th year of doing this. And I like the story behind it, but I also feel like you've been painting the facade of this building for so long already.
Yes.
Do you feel like you know the building on a personal level, Jason? What's that like?
Well, if you could be deeply connected to an edifice, I feel like I do have that connection with the Guggenheim.
Yeah.
I can close my eyes and picture it perfectly. And I could draw it blindfolded at this point. Not that I would like to do that, but I could. And it's funny, when you commit to doing something every year for 20 years, it's it's a commitment to yourself, first and foremost, that in 20 years I'll still be painting. It's also a great way to see stylistic evolution and a way to mark what's happening in the world. So I'm actually about to start Guggenheim 15. And, every year something presents itself and I don't know what it is till I get there. And during the pandemic, I did the pandemic Guggenheim. I did it with my left hand. I did it in 90 minutes during the course of the Woody Allen movie, Manhattan. I know he's canceled. I still love the movie. And
you did it with a palette knife.
And I did it with a palette knife. And so I decided to take all control out of the creative experience because we had lost all control in our life.
Yeah. And
so this year I was really trying to figure out what to do. And I actually owe this year's idea to a young man named Lucas Sloman. And so Lucas, I got to know through his parents who are collectors and dear friends of ours. And Lucas is an artist who creates poetry that he then creates AI imagery. And so we had gone back and forth discussing this. And I just remember looking at his Instagram, like, I don't know where these images come from or what is going on, but they're amazing.
So he feeds the poetry into AI in some way, and the AI comes up with the image.
The AI comes up with the image. And what happens is you go into the program, you could start with an image, you upload an image, and then the AI will use that imagery and then prompts. So you could give a prompt like, for example, so this year's Guggenheim, I decided to do the AI Guggenheim.
Okay.
So I uploaded a photo I took from when I was in New York. I actually produced Lucas's first show. So we had a show at the Living Gallery in Brooklyn. It's awesome. Super cool. Great turnout. He sold a bunch of pieces. It was so cool. And so I went in there, and this is the first time that I ever used AI software. And I went in there and I put the image in, and I did, like Guggenheim during the apocalypse and Guggenheim during this. And then you could go and say, remove the sky or add a background, and it generates these images. And I got to tell you, they're haunting. There's something about AI imagery. It's like if an alien was creating what they understood about humanity. If the only understanding they had of humanity was watching like 10 small televisions with like 1980s sitcoms.
Like the language built in 1980s.
Yeah, it's like you got like Alex P. Keaton and Bill Cosby.
I don't know why, but Alf just came right to mind because I was like, alien 80s, terrible,
alien life form,
awful 80s.
Loved Alf.
Did you really love Alf?
He was very abusive to cats, though.
Oh, God, he was such a dick.
But yeah, I did love Alf. I mean, I was an 80s kid. So this year I went through and I created maybe, 50 different iterations and found the one I really liked. And but this year is going to be the AI Guggenheim because I think that captures, now I'm painting it. Right. So I'm doing a painting based on the AI imagery.
Right.
And what I also like about this is it's going to create an interesting intellectual property conversation because anything you create through an AI program is not copyrightable. But if you adhere to the term transformative, which is the term that's used to identify whether something is a unique piece of art. So transformative was loosely defined by Jasper Johns as take something, do something to it, do something else to it.
Gotcha.
So if you hit that 3-point criteria, it's considered transformative. Okay. So for example, behind me, Guernica. So I'm taking Casso's original work. I'm changing the size. I am doing it in 2 panels. I'm adding neon tubes and I'm creating it with a different medium.
Right.
And so will that be considered transformative enough for me to consider this? I could sell it as an original regardless.
No matter what, but to be considered, to be true.
As an artist, I could go and take a photo of someone in the middle of the road without their consent, paint their portrait and sell it.
Sure.
I could then sell 10 limited edition prints. However, if I did get their photo without permission, created that work, and then started merchandising at an open end, I could be sued. So intellectual property law is very interesting. I study it very closely. There was this famous case, and I know this sounds like the setup for a bad joke, but there was a rabbi in Times Square.
Can't wait.
And he, so a photographer took his photo without his consent. Now, if you happen to be in a place like Times Square, it's very difficult for anyone to sue because it's a place where you would reasonably expect to be photographed.
Right.
But This photographer then took this image and sold a limited edition set of prints. They were going 50, 60 grand a pop. So the rabbi sued the photographer and then lost in court because it was reasonable for him to expect to be photographed in Times Square, and because it was a limited edition series defined as a work of art, it's protected under the First Amendment.
Gotcha. Huh.
Mass merchandising is not. The biggest intellectual property case of our time, well, there's several, and Richard Prince, I'm looking at you, but Shepard Fairey.
Okay.
So Shepard Fairey did the Hope poster for Obama. Right. And this was huge. I mean, if you could look at one piece of art that may have actually affected a presidential election, Shepard Fairey's Hope
That's
image
not the truth. Yeah.
is there.
Agree. So
what happened was Shepard Fairey used an Associated Press image without written consent. Now, it was very clear. You could line up the image exactly. There was no manipulation. Now, had he taken that image, reversed it, made some slight modifications, changed it a little bit, and did what he did, he probably would have been fine.
Okay.
But what happened was the Associated Press sued him successfully. He had to make an undisclosed payment because it wasn't a limited edition. Now, if he'd done one original piece and an edition of 20, he would have been fine. However, he merchandised the image like crazy. I mean, you could see that everywhere. Mugs, shirts, whatever. Like the whole, it was just eponymous with the time. So he lost a lot of money. But what got him in trouble and sent him to jail for 3 months was as soon as he knew that there was a trial, he destroyed all the files.
Oops.
So he destroyed evidence. And so it was actually evidence tampering that sent him to prison for 3 months. Now, as a street artist, it's not necessarily the worst thing that could happen. Gives you a little bit of street cred. But, you really want to avoid that scenario. So your, creativity, it's been around for so long. How much can you reinvent a wheel that has been turning for thousands of years? So, you can only hope to put your own visual language in the world. And yes, this is appropriating Picasso, and Picasso appropriated hundreds of artists, and that's just what it is.
Ask us.
Yeah. And it was I believe it was a Warhol quote that said, good artists copy, great artists steal. And, and that's just kind of the nature of it. I mean, there's nothing new under the sun. I mean, I was doing square format images because I was impacted by Andy Warhol painting his portraits in square formats. And it just so happened that all of a sudden here comes Instagram, that's square format.
Right.
And then a lot of artists did square format art just to fit Instagram. So, everybody's influenced by everybody. Yeah.
And we have a mutual friend, Liz Park, and I've interviewed Liz too.
I love Liz Park.
And she's great. Yay, Liz. But she likes to say, where is the artist's hand?
Right.
Where is the artist's hand? And are you producing this as a copy for your own study? What are you doing? But how are you making it your own? It still matters. Excuse me. And how you're talking about, an artist taking something and putting their mark on it and then all of a sudden it is their original, but the inspiration has to be there in some way. If it's similar to something else, but it's still the artist's hand. Right. It's still your composition, Jason. Totally.
And everything that I create, I'll stand behind it. And, I'm proactively expecting there to be, some sort of interesting conversation around the forthcoming AI Guggenheim.
I'm excited. Because I've seen you've done so many. There's one that I'm thinking of right now. It's very clinically done, and there's a super straight lines and all this stuff. And
that's the Silver Guggenheim number. That's 2019. So I think that's 10 or 11. That's 11 in the series.
Right. And then my favorite one is the one you did, I think the year you moved to Teton Valley. And there's a cowboy on horseback coming away from the Guggenheim with the blindfold on, or
the Guggenheim 10.
Yeah.
And it was Walt Longmire in front of the Guggenheim on his horse, because I love Longmire. And I done it, and everybody loved it, and I just felt like it was boring. So I took an oil stick out that I had a couple oil sticks hiding away in my closet that I'd used up in Woodstock to create a large piece, my friend Jeremy Penn. Yeah. And I just kind of went to town on it for 3-4 minutes, and it's atypical, and people are like, well, why did you do that? And I'm like, I wish I had a better explanation for you. I just wasn't excited about the painting. And then I just went and I decided to go messy.
Yeah.
And it's, again, you could make the painting, perfect, or you kind of go with your instincts. And every now and again, I like to break that mold. Like I'm a Virgo, so I paint with very small brushes. I do lots of layers, and I'm very meticulous and anal, if you will. But when it comes down to experimentation, there has to be room for that. And that's why I did the pandemic Guggenheim in my left hand with a palette knife.
Just lovely.
Because, if you're not...
Such a great reflection of the culture, and just like...
It was the time.
What a wonderful way to channel it, too. I loved your choices on that one. It's really great.
Thank you.
Speaking of subject matter, I'm curious, were you a kid that drew a lot of tigers? What did you draw on a placemat at a Chinese restaurant as a 5-year-old?
Oh, it's a good question. Well, when I was a kid, I was obsessed with ice hockey, and I still am.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot you play hockey.
I'm a beer leaguer, so I play on a couple teams, and we have a spectacular record. I think we're 0-4 in championship games. All the games except for one, we brought a lead into the third period and collapsed upon ourselves like a dying star. But as a kid, I used to love to draw goalies. I mean, I was obsessed. I had like this classic 1980s Puck Stops Here poster with like Tom Barrasso and Kelly Rudy. And for the hockey guys, you know what I'm talking about. And so I would draw goalies, It's not like Jonah Hill's character where he was drawing, male genitalia all over the place. For me, it was just hockey goaltenders.
Oh my goodness.
So I was just drawing hockey players all the time.
And so you obviously had to be obsessed with Slapshot. I mean, come on.
I mean, Hanson Brothers all day.
Right.
All day.
Come on. Such good material.
Those
for the
guys.
Rest of your life.
Yeah, Slapshot, just a tremendous movie. And actually, even though Sean William Scott, I think it is, who was Stifler. Is that who it was? So the movie Goon, it's very clear to me that he cannot skate. Like he could barely stand up. But the story was awesome. And Liev Schreiber was in the movie as well as another kind of like grizzled goon. And
I'm gonna look this up.
Goon is a fun hockey movie.
Okay.
Youngblood. Vintage classic.
You forget, but the 80s.
Yeah.
I mean,
it brought a lot of heat. I think that there's room for another great hockey movie, and I think there's room for another great golf movie. But I'm in the very I would not infancy, but I would say very early stages of my debut novel. Okay. And but I don't want to talk about it too much because I'm writing it under a pseudonym.
Absolutely, you should. I agree.
It will involve golf and it will involve murder.
And also, too, when you were a kid, were you a storyteller? Also, I mean, Jason and I are able to talk through writing. He has written for periodicals just like I have, and some larger platform newspapers at a national level. And used to have a column with Forbes.
Yes.
Look at you.
Smaller publication.
But yeah, I think we were talking earlier about like the choice of material, the choice of words. And I like to say I'm never going to use all the words, but you got to be willing to have a dictionary handy because sometimes when you lean on the same shit all over and over again, you're just not really going anywhere with your stuff. And it has, it's not about medium. It's like, did you vary up your color choice? Did you change kind of the texture by using a different brush? There are so many parallels between painting and writing that way. Don't you agree?
Completely.
Yeah. And like the dictionary and the thesaurus are your tools.
Yes.
But what are you writing about? What's the subject matter? It all matters. And it has to sound fresh. Right. It's so hard.
I think, what I've come to understand through 14 years of dedicated professional painting is that, your evolution is glacial. And, there are little things that I do. And, one of the things that I love to do is go to a museum and try to figure out what the last brushstroke was.
Oh God, what a great
It's nerve-wracking. And I got to tell you, I don't even remember on half the paintings I do. But really? I always like to think, for me, the last stroke is always going to be the signature. So I know that. But I'm saying the last thing that you painted in the painting, and for some reason, I try to work top to bottom, but I also spin the canvas around 360 degrees because I can only paint straight left to right.
Gotcha.
Can't do it this way.
Okay.
This dead straight. I had a surgeon tell me I could have been a surgeon when he saw me paint. I said I wanted to make a living, so I became an artist. And but it's one of those things where you're looking at it, and your evolution over time, you learn more efficient ways to, build the underpainting or the infrastructure of the painting, and more efficient ways to draw it in, and how you're going to layer and how you actually apply the paint. And what makes master painters so brilliant is not only is the image compelling, but you look in and the brush strokes are brilliant. Like the nuances of the strokes. I mean, they're able to create texture that is so real and vibrant and translucent with just these simple strokes. And that's what really baffles me. For me, I like to paint things very crisp, very clear, sharp lines.
It's a super calculated choice.
Very calculated. And that's why there is room for these contemporaneous paintings, because, if you just do one style, you stagnate.
Yeah. And I think, don't go at it. I'm going to become an expert at this. I want to get really good at this, but don't stop yourself from saying, maybe I should dabble.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with breaking up your routine and being like,
I will never, ever live long enough to create the things that I want to create and to learn as much as I want to.
Yeah.
I learn something every day.
Right.
And it's incredible. And, you take this knowledge with you, and it's not knowledge that you have to write down or you forget. It becomes part of you. It's innate because you've learned it through experience, and experience is the best teacher.
Yes, it is. And I'm wondering too, with all your kind of calculated approach to how you want to present your art, when you're in flow, hopefully we all achieve that at one point or another. Do you ever come out of it as if you're in some kind of fugue state and you don't really know what you just did? Or does that happen?
100%.
Thank God, because that happens to me all the time.
I call it time travel.
Yeah.
And when I'm locked in on a painting, I will come in at 8:00 in the morning and start painting, and then I will look up and it's 6:00.
That's right.
And I have no idea what happened. It's like there is, and when I'm really in a painting, I will close my eyes and sleep, and I'll see it. I can see my brush strokes and everything. And one thing that people don't realize, at least for my methodology of painting, is that 98% of the intellectual thought process that goes into the art is done away from the studio.
Yeah.
And so really when I'm here, I'm executing. And I had the good fortune of meeting Saul LeWitt when I was in college through his daughter. And Saul LeWitt coined the phrase conceptual art. And, I think his latest, when he was in his early 40s, he was literally mopping the floor at the MoMA. And he, had all these great ideas. So he would draw like on a bar napkin. He would draw like a structure, and then it would be built, or he'd draw a pattern for a wall, and he'd have other people paint it. And he really ignited this very serious conversation about, how important is it that the artists themselves physically create the work?
Right. Okay.
A lot of people don't realize, but when you look back at, masters from the, early stages of creativity, Titian, Velázquez, literally everybody who created Caravaggio, all these amazing artists, they had apprentices. And the masters would do the hands, head, and feet because that's what the masters did. And all the rest of it was done by apprentices. Right. So you had these apprentices that were just magnificent, and they were completely unknown, creating in the shadows. And, no different than, it's someone comes up and they have a big company, and then they have someone creating the intellectual property that is owned by the company.
Our boss, Laura Chihuly, does that.
Right.
Yeah.
Andy Warhol, he had his assistants basically doing all silk screens. Like, so is it a Warhol because he says it's a Warhol? Damien Hirst's The Impossibility of Death in the Mind of the Living, which is a $12 million stuffed shark. There's a book called The $12 Million Stuffed Shark. And if you're a Mets fan, Steve Cohen's all over it. So read it. It's a good book. But he had an Australian shark hunter catch a shark, put it in 2 tanks of formaldehyde, and every 5 years they have to change the shark because the shark will rot. And so that's kind of a perpetually changing and evolving piece of work. And really what the collector owns is the concept. So, but simultaneously, when you sell an original work of art, the artist still retains the intellectual property unless that is transferred with the sale of the physical piece of art. So it's a very convoluted area. I retain the right to exhibit the work, and I retain all intellectual property associated with it. So while someone could go and buy this painting for $40,000, they couldn't then have it scanned and merchandise it. That would be in violation of my ownership of the image.
Course, yes.
So it's a very interesting thing where you own the physical piece, but you don't own the rights to the image. And that's a paradox that's being explored on the blockchain with NFTs.
Sure.
You own the iteration on the blockchain alone, and people found this perplexing, but it's not, because it mirrors exactly what happens when you sell artwork. Sure,
and you've done that on your own. Well, not on your own. You have a support through a casino in Vegas, and have done Vegas Vicky.
Yes,
which,
with Circa.
Of course, you're going to do neon, Jason. I mean. I mean, Vegas
that is a sexy neon broad, right? Let me tell you right there. Shit, right? She's hot stuff. First time I saw her, I was like, this is the second time a woman has stopped me dead in my tracks.
Kapow.
Yeah, that's right.
And so you're kind of dabbling all over the place. I love, though, Jason, that you're still so deeply involved in your own creativity with the use of canvas, and it is a slow life, even writing. I actually have a contract with a larger national brand and Southern Living, and I do online content editing for them, and we get emails from them that say, you are not permitted to use AI when you're writing for us.
Yes.
And so they are acknowledging that it could happen.
You can go to...
And they are saying, that is not okay with us. We want the writer's voice, just like the artist's brush.
Yes.
And we hired you because you're a human.
Right.
And if we could do this automatically by pressing the button, that would already be happening.
Yes. I mean,
so
people will always want to hear a human voice. People will always want to see the human touch.
Yeah.
And it's just something that's never going to go away.
Right.
You could go to ChatGPT and say, I want a 1,500 word essay on Abraham Lincoln at an approximate B- grade. And it will churn it out exactly. Which is, this is a brilliant time for students, and it's got to be miserable for professors. I don't even know how you would
to be a teacher
regulate that.
Right? Just tear my heart out of my chest.
It would be very, very hard.
Yeah. It would.
But yeah, there's always going to be room for the human touch, and I think increasingly as we move closer to Ray Kurzweil's prediction of singularity, the humanity, and the more human people are to each other, and the more humanity you see in the arts and creativity, there's going to be a real touchstone point there, because AI is frightening.
Yeah,
it's a dangerous thing. The exponential learning. Elon Musk, put a limit on the amount of tweets people could view per day, because these AI companies are scouring through billions of tweets to learn how different people are processing, thoughts and ideas, and it's becoming more clever by the day. And it's like, you could go to ChatGPT and be like, just for the sake of it, I said, what steps would you take to establish an acupuncture practice in a mountain town of 2,000 or less people? And within seconds, there were 150 lines with bullet points, links, and everything to get it going. Quantum computing is so astounding, and the amount of data it is able to crunch. Now you have all these people who built these major supercomputers, particularly with graphics cards. That's what they need the most to mine cryptocurrency. But cryptocurrency went into a pretty severe bear market.
Yeah.
And went down. So that was not as much of a necessity. So now these people are reappropriating these supercomputers to build AI companies.
Okay.
And so, there's always something new coming down the line. And but with AI, we're at the point now where people will be able to completely mirror your voice. Just this interview alone, AI will be able to take this and could make produce my voice to say anything in the whole world. And they could call my wife and say stuff, and you could get a recording. Like, we are probably 3 years out of photographs and video as being inadmissible evidence in a court of law, because it's so easy to fudge right now.
Wow. So
imagine that. You're like, hey, I caught you on camera doing this. And you're like, it wasn't me. And that's going to be a legitimate excuse.
I believe it. Yeah. And to maintain our own humanity, it's so, you have to really try on an individual level now, especially, to tap into what makes you, and to kind of understand that you still are living an impactful life, even if you're not buying into all of this technology. If anything, push back push back a little bit and ask yourself, what am I contributing to the world? I'm a human who has feelings that not everybody needs to know about, but perhaps there's a way for me to communicate that. And I believe that everybody on an individual level has creativity. Mm-hmm. I think that people are often drained of the impulse to do so because they are criticized too much or asked, what's this good for? You need to get a job. Why are you spending your money? Blah, 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 asking all kinds of questions about why even make this in the first place. And honestly, I just, for this podcast and to say, the creative adult is the child who survived, means that you held on to a little bit of your own blueprint, right?
Yes.
And when you meet yourself in front of your art every time you have to work on it, Jason, what do you think your 7-year-old self would have to say about that?
Well, I don't even have to think about that because I have a 6, 8, and 10-year-old
who give me
that perspective. And it's cool. Like, They definitely have favorite pieces, and there's stuff that they really love. They're fans of my work, which is great. I'm fans of their work. They do amazing. So Coraline, actually, she just wrote this book, and we were talking. I was joking around with her, and we were talking about Harry Potter, and I was like, oh yeah, well, I much prefer the hairless painter. And so she ran with it, and she wrote a book called Very Hairy Mary and the Hairless Painter. And the premise was the hairless painter was very attracted to Very Hairy Mary because she had a lot of hair and he had no hair. And they have a deep romance. But Very Hairy Mary had to go out and replace the toilet because it got clogged. And the hairless painter was basically holding it in for the whole thing. And finally he gets to use the facilities at the climax of the story. So it was pretty amazing. But
it sounds like they're there to help each other out.
Their imagination, the kid, it's incredible. You give them a paintbrush, they create, and it's just I let them go.
I know, it's so impulsive, and they don't have any reason not to do it, right?
And
a kid with hangups, kid with hangups and finger paint on their fingers doesn't exist.
Yeah. And look, the reality is if you stop creating art at the age of 5 because someone said your drawing is terrible, or someone discouraged you, or you drew on a wall and got yelled at, that's where your ability stays.
Yeah. So
when someone says to you, literally, I couldn't draw a stick figure, it's probably because they stopped at 3 or 4 and because someone told them they were terrible. So fostering creativity is important, and creativity transcends anything. I worked in with a lot of legal documents in one of my jobs, and really beautifully written contract is art. You're setting these, you have a master service agreement which will govern, say, 10, 20 ancillary documents, depending on the size of the deal, and the defined terms that you set in the beginning are used throughout each document.
Sure.
So if you set really, if you're very precise about the defined terms, which saves you from reiterating, you could streamline the documentation and write it beautifully. And so beautiful legal documents, you look at warehouse logistics,
I participated in both of these things in my career.
Right. And
I've been part of contract negotiations, and I used to work at a warehouse.
Right.
As an administrative person, not pulling things off the shelves, thank God. But
look at Amazon, right? Yeah. The depth and breadth of what they are able to put out and how quickly they do it. The efficiency there. So that, that's creativity.
Yeah.
We had
to do things efficiently and pull it off and know that it's going to work every time.
Yes.
That's a genius move of creativity. I mean, look at FedEx. We
yeah.
only review the plot lines of Castaway to understand how important it is to be timely, what it takes.
And also don't go on a flight to deliver FedEx packages if you have a toothache, because you're probably going to have to knock your own tooth out with an ice skate.
I love that scene. Castaway is such a good thing to watch while you're working, because you look up and you see him, he's so quiet, right? And you look up and you're like, oh, look what he's doing. It's so interesting. And so last time that happened, I looked up and it was the moment he was using the ice skate to fix himself.
It's funny you're in that situation, and literally a cut on your leg could be the end of you.
Yeah.
You don't have antibiotics.
How am I going to survive this amputation?
Yeah. It's pretty.
I don't think so.
See, I don't like to take unnecessary risks. For me, it's risky enough to, go for it in 2 shots on a par 5 on the golf course. That's about all the risk I'm willing to take these days. So.
And you're about to travel to the motherland for that.
Yes.
Action.
Heading to Scotland.
Yeah, doing it. And are you going to play at St. Andrews?
We are. Actually, I'm staying in St. Andrews.
Oh, dear.
And so my buddy Scott and his son Quinn, he loves my golf series. We used to run for the Manhattan Track Club. He became famous for running cross country with his friend after school, like Forrest Gump style. Started East Coast all the way to the West Coast, and
Nice.
so he got real into golf. Him and his son came out last summer, and we played a bunch of rounds. And he's like, I got this place, St. Andrews, and I really would love to have you do a painting of the old course. And could we work something out if I, bring you out and take you out for a bunch of golf? I said, absolutely. So yeah, next Tuesday, going to Scotland and staying at St. Andrews, and we're playing a hickory stick tournament, which is the old wooden clubs with the old balls, and then we're playing
Like the Bugs Bunny?
Yes, exactly. And we're playing a one club tournament, and I like to putt from 150 yards out, which my golf buddies know it's not proper golf. But that's how I golf.
Okay.
And Scotland's gonna be great because it's all link style, so I can putt for forever. So it's gonna be fun. The caddies are gonna probably be either really impressed or disgusted with my game,
Right.
but we'll let them sort
We're
that
trying to
out.
get you off the course a little bit faster.
Yeah.
But anyway, well, Jason, thank you so much for all of this. I
Yeah,
just
you're
love
welcome.
talking
Thanks for having
this
me.
stuff with you. And next time we won't be on camera, but hopefully there'll be drinks,
Oh yeah,
right?
drinks all the time.
Thanks again, lady.
Yeah, girl.
I appreciate you.
Advance Pretend is a podcast produced by 9 Stories Creative Podcast Studios, created by Jenn, executive produced and edited by Matt Jackson. Find us wherever you get your podcasts.